welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Before we begin, would you mind telling us just a bit about yourself and why you've decided to join the conversation we're having about women in power?
Sure. Well, my name is Molly Jordan, and I feel like I'm just your everyday run-of-the-mill mom, teacher, but I feel like by tapping into my own individual power and living authentically and open, I can move throughout the world and have my energy affect other people in a positive way.
So to begin with, and this is a big question, and it's fairly loaded, but what does power mean to you?
I think of power like on the big scale in the world as groups of people shifting the norm and movements. But for me personally, it's just kind of learning about myself as a core and just moving in the world and being an example for people. Like I said, day to day, raising my kids, being a teacher, being a sober woman, and just affecting them and sharing my story and having that affect them positively.
So you mentioned to me in an earlier conversation that although you feel very fulfilled these days, there was a time in your life that you didn't feel you had much control over really anything in your life or your identity. Can you tell us a bit about some of these early experiences and maybe how they affected you?
Absolutely. Well, I was born gay, so that was the first major thing I think that affected me. And then I was raised in a very religious family and fed the message over and over that I was flawed, that I was wrong, that I was a sinner. And so that's really hard to accept when you're kind of finding your identity growing up. So for me, I partied a lot in college like I thought most people did, but addiction really took hold. So I had addiction to drugs and alcohol for years and years. And I think that was my way of trying to escape myself and not have to just kind of be comfortable in my own skin. I think probably for me, through addiction and using and drinking and hitting a rock bottom really allowed me to kind of surrender fully and then kind of recreate and regrow myself from that point. So, taking ownership over those things that once controlled me really allowed me to tap into my power.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you take ownership of that? And I love that phrase. But, was there a distinct moment or experience in your life that you can point to as sort of a turning point in how you thought about the power that you did have to make those changes, maybe your personal agency?
Yeah. I always kind of had this definition of power as being somebody really loud and really larger than life and abrasive even at times. And I just wasn't really that person. So through sobriety, that was my turning point. Kind of taking my life back and finding out who I was truly. Allowed me to figure out that just kind of sitting in a peaceful state and being mindful about how I affect other people and raise my children and just kind of do life has allowed me to be powerful in my own right. Yeah.
So I know that you've been a teacher for many years, but I understand that specifically after achieving sobriety, that you switched subjects and grade levels.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I think it all kind of goes back to before I got sober, I wasn't in tune with myself. I didn't know myself. So as I started to kind of get sober and kind of clear away all the buffering that was happening with drugs and alcohol, I realized that I was teaching high school English and kind of barely surviving in that. And it was really hard for me to be passionate about it. So I was a collegiate athlete. I played volleyball in college, and I knew that I love to be challenged physically and move my body, and I'm a kinesthetic learner. So I thought, what would be my niche? So as I grew in sobriety and got to know myself, I started to kind of fine tune what I thought I wanted to do for a career. So I went back to school and I became an elementary PE teacher, which is the best gig on the planet. So I get to just have this really big energy and challenge these kids and let them practice life skills that I think they get more in the environment of my class than maybe they do within the four walls of a classroom. And I just get to see them grow as good little human beings. And so I just really feel like that's where I'm making the most impact career-wise.
So I'm wondering too if there's some crossover here, because in addition to teaching, you're also bringing up a family with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
How has raising your daughters perhaps changed how you think about yourself, about power, about the effect that you have on other people?
Yeah, well, there's nothing like motherhood to really make you introspective, I believe, and hold a mirror up to all of your good qualities as well as your character defects. I learned so much by being a mom, but so I also think along with power, just the perseverance that I've had to kind of deal with in my life to overcome certain traumas or certain things has allowed me to really reach my full potential and live in that. So raising two little girls, my partner and I are both white women, and we have two little brown girls, one of which was a donated embryo that I got to carry to term, and the other is a little Mexican-Japanese baby that we adopted at birth. So just having a transracial family, having a queer family, these are all things that aren't socially acceptable for the norm. So just learning how to use my voice and stand my ground and lead with love in everything that I do, I then can be that example to my daughters to move through life in that way that they can also find their own power.
So I know that a lot of consideration went into their names.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And I think our listeners might like to hear a little bit about that, because I know I found it quite interesting.
Okay, so Huxley, my 3-year-old daughter, she just turned 3. She's actually named after Aldous Huxley. And my partner and I were trying to conceive, and with no luck, so we thought we were kind of at the end of that journey. And we had friends come forward that I had met actually through sobriety in AA, and they said, we have these embryos we'd like to donate to you. So after years and years of trying to adopt and trying to conceive, I carried Huxley to term, and I was actually at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur praying to my God about, what kind of footwork am I supposed to be doing? I know I'm supposed to be a mom. Is this going to happen? And this Huxley Hall, this plaque kind of lit up with the sun, and I just started crying and knew that I was supposed to have a baby, and that girl or boy, they would be named Huxley. So we have her, and she's 3. And then Journey, so we had 5 more embryos left after Huxley and continued to try with no luck. And then literally 2 days after, we found out that we were kind of done with the IVF journey. A social worker from 5 years previously came forward and said, I have a birth mom. She wants to choose your family. I know you're not even licensed, but is this something that you're willing to do? And so after a lot of prayer and thought, about 2 weeks worth, we met the birth mom and fell in love and knew that that was our baby. And so we named her Journey.
And also her middle name is reflective of her heritage.
It is. So it was very important to us that we do racial mirroring for our daughters, and that they see other people just like them, and that they carry that heritage into themselves. So our birth mom, Journey's birth mom's middle name is Sumi. And so she actually passed when Journey was 2 months old, which is a really hard part of that story. But so when we went to court to finalize the adoption, we decided to keep Sumi, which is her middle name, as Journey's middle name. And Sumi in Japanese actually means to be taken care of. So it just was so serendipitous.
So what supports have been most important to you in achieving these very big personal goals, as well as some of your professional goals?
Right. Support systems are everything. Definitely getting sober and finding my AA family. I have a great group of women that we do meetings religiously every Saturday. So they're kind of like my AA family. I have found a beautiful relationship with my higher power, which I choose to call God. So God is on my side. I feel like there's a huge progression between being raised religious and then kind of coming to my own understanding. My family has been behind me. My wife is my biggest supporter. She's just so beautiful how she is steadfast and firm and loyal, and encouraging me to go after any of my dreams. So that's worked out really well.
If you could go back and give your, if we could, right?
Right.
If you could go back and give your younger self any advice at all, what would it be?
Yeah, this one makes me emotional. I'm sorry. It's the same message I want my girls to get. It's just like, as a little girl, knowing that you matter. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That you have a voice and that you're worthy. Deciding who and what you want to give your power to, I think is something I didn't realize until later in life. I think that now knowing that the energy that I bring to things and the honesty and the transparency that I bring to things just has this ripple effect and affects everything around me. And I think knowing that much sooner would have been great. But like I said, if you can go back, but just, that you have your voice and you can use it. And it doesn't have to be loud and roaring, but it can just be your truth.
All right. Well, thank you so much
for
joining us in this conversation and sharing your experiences with us.
All right. Thank you.